Hey friends, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we're in the sewing room and I am going to be doing a tutorial on how to make a pincushion. I've had lots of my viewers asking me about my pincushions, and I have told them that it was on my to-do list, and today I am ready to share that with you and do a tutorial on how to make one of these using a 4-inch quilt block. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the ones I have here real quick. This one right here, if you have watched the video on how to make the March dish mat, this is that block right here. So there is a pattern or cutting directions, and you can watch the video to know how to put this block together if you want to do a shamrock. And this one was my first one, and I decided to do this one because I wanted to have a little bit of spring decor, and it was March, and I thought, oh, I'll just turn one of those blocks. And I actually had a leftover block from the tutorial, and so I thought I'll just turn one of these blocks into a pincushion. And so this was the very first one that I made, and it came out really cute, I thought. And then when April came around and I was doing the bunny quilt with you guys, or the bunny block, I guess, this one I made, the carrot block that I had in that tutorial would not work for a pincushion. So I came up with this carrot block, which it took a lot of thinking. It's not paper pieced. It is just a plain pieced quilt block. And so I just came up with this design, and I tell you right now, I don't even know how I made it at this point. It was just kind of measure and think and then cut. But I thought it was a cute springy carrot block, and so I have used that one for decor. And then this is the latest one that I've made. And this is the one that I've had lots of people asking about, the strawberry one. I would do a strawberry block, but the one I have here, I won't do a tutorial on because it is very small pieces, and I have a lot of viewers who would find that to be really frustrating to work with. Those of you that are quilters that have been quilting for a long time, I'm sure this would be a fun block to do, but it does require really small pieces, and it can get kind of frustrating when you're making it. So I won't be making this one. Now I am working on some strawberry blocks, so it may be something that I'll have a strawberry block and maybe have it so that it'll turn into a pincushion, a 4-inch finished strawberry block. But right now we're not going to do this one. But again, I may have a block that you can use later. But this one I did a little differently than these other two. Now these first two, I quilted the top, this block here, and you can see the quilting lines on it. So I just had a piece of batting and I just quilted it. This one right here, I did the same. I just added batting and I quilted it. This one I did not quilt. I wanted to see what would happen if you didn't quilt, and I was pretty much what I was thinking. It's not going to lay as flat. It's going to be a little softer, so it will poof a little bit more. These are pretty flat like that. The other thing on these two right here, I had been using really small scraps that I have had when I'm trimming down blocks, really small ones, not, nothing bigger than that. Most of them were in strips that were just really thin strips, and I stuffed these. So they're nice and heavy, and they've worked nicely. It is a little trickier to push your pins in, not hard, but I can tell when I put my pin in one of these, it's a little trickier sometimes because there is fabric in there. On this one right here, it goes in real easy. But these right here, I like the look of this. This one, again, I did not quilt the top, so that's always an option. You don't have to quilt the top. I also, instead of using the fabric scraps, the tiny fabric scraps, I use some polyester batting and some rice, dry rice. And you could just use polyester batting, but you won't have the weight. and I really like the weight of this. I would suggest at least halfway or almost halfway with the dry rice, and then kind of spread that out into the corners and stuff, and then pack it in with the fiber, the polyester fiber. But that's the difference with these blocks. All of them, I used a piece of fabric for the bottom and used interfacing that was fusible just to make sure it was heavy duty enough down there. This one right here, I actually did a little block on the bottom, and it's also quilted, so that's an option too. It does make it a little more work, but it's really cute that way. The other thing you could do is you can add crushed walnuts, and I have some right here. Now, when I say crushed walnuts, I mean the crushed walnut shells. I should be clear about that. But you can get the ground black walnut shells. I do find these are getting quite expensive. And I'm tempted to go out in my yard and get all of my black walnuts and crush them up really good. But this is getting pretty expensive, so I tend to go with the rice since I am making these pretty much one every month or so. So just the dry rice, you can just buy plain white rice, and that's probably the cheapest that you'll find. And I just put that in there, and then the polyester fill. But you can find other things you can stuff with. You might even try batting scraps. I haven't tried that yet. That may work too. Now, I made one other pincushion the other day because when I've been making these, I've been trying to figure out what is the easiest method for adding the sides, because that is the trickiest part of doing a cube shape. And my first one turned out pretty good. Then I tried something else on this carrot one, and I had pleats in it, and it's fine. I mean, it's usable, but it's not as nice. Then this last one here, I tried even a little different method, and I didn't quite like the way that one came out. Again, it's fine. It looks fine. But I wanted to have something, if I was going to do a tutorial on it, that would make really nice corners. And so I figured out a way to do that. And I think this will be the easiest method for anybody that is wanting to make this. So this is the block that I made in my last video, just a simple block, real easy to make. It reminds me a little bit of a strawberry blossom. And so I made this one, and you know, you could have a strawberry block and a blossom block together in coordinating fabrics. So I thought that if I made a pincushion using a coordinating bee block, those would be a cute set together. And then I could also do a coordinating strawberry. This fabric doesn't quite coordinate with it, but I thought, well, you know, I can use some fabric that coordinates with it, and that would be great. Both of these have some Lori Holt fabric on them, and I think these are going to be cute. But we made the bee block, and if you are new to this channel, you can go back a couple of weeks or maybe just a week ago, and you can find how to make this 4-inch finished bee block that I designed. And we're going to be using that for the one I'm making today. Now, if you are not feeling like you can handle this bee block right here in a pincushion, this one would be easier, and you can do this one. If you want to even just do a plain piece of fabric, you could do that. It's fine. Or just even a 4-patch or a 9-patch would be pretty. But you choose what kind of block you want to use. Again, the directions will work for any 4-inch finished quilt block. Sawtooth star, anything that you think, a snowball, you know, anything that you think you would like to make. But I'm going to use our bee. That's why I made the bee. So let's see. I'm going to show you what we need to make this. So I'm going to clear this off and bring you right back. So to make our pincushion, you are going to need a 4.5-inch pieced block. And here's my bumblebee. It measures right now 4.5 inches. Once it's placed into something, it will be a 4-inch finished block. The other things you're going to need, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to read what you need and you can take notes, and then I'm going to hold this up a little closer and you can take screenshots so that you'll know your cutting instructions. I do not have the cutting instructions typed out. I just wanted to get these on the board. It's easier that way, and share them with you this way. So you can either write it down or you can take a screenshot. The other thing you're going to need is, in my block here, my background fabric is this pink. And we are going to be adding a strip around our block. And that way it will help our block not be kind of lost. Because if I tried to make that into a pincushion, it would almost look like a white block with a yellow diamond in the center. And I want to make sure it looks like a flower. So we're going to add a border. And using that same fabric that you used in your pieced block for the background, whichever kind of block you're using, I am using 2 1.5 by 4.5 inch fabric, same as the background on the pieced block. I'm also cutting 2 1.5 by 6 inch pieces of fabric, same as used on the pieced block, same as the background. For the sides of your pincushion, these right here, you are going to need 4 strips, and they should be 1.5 by 5.5 inches. These are the sides. If you're planning on quilting your top block, and this one was quilted too, just a little bigger, you will need about a 6.5 inch square piece of batting. It can be larger. I've cut this one just a little bit tiny, a little tiny bit bigger than what our block is going to be once we add this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to quilt it, and then we're going to trim it down to the size that we need for our pincushion. But I'm giving you these pieces right here a little bigger. That way, if your block wasn't quite exact, you're going to have some wiggle room and you can cut your block perfectly. For the bottom of your pincushion, you're going to need a 5.5 inch square piece of fabric, and this is for the bottom. And I also put in a piece of fusible interfacing, and this is a 5 inch square, and it is a 1/4 inch. We're going to leave a 1/4 inch around all over just to keep it from being too thick. Then I pulled my cute honeybee label that we made in the video on how to make quilt tags and quilt labels. And you can see I did one here too. If you want to add one to your block, you can. This one was one of the free ones that was in the free download. If you want to make one, just go to that video, and I have a tutorial on how to make your own tags. And if you just want to download the free one, just go to that video, and in the description box below, you'll find this free download. And it's got several free tags on it that you can use, and they're fun to use. And that's all we're going to need to make this pincushion. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you can take a screenshot. Let me put these together a little bit more here. And that way, I will just stop and freeze so you can take a screenshot there. And you can take a screenshot there. And there's one more. All right, so I'm going to set this aside. So the first thing we need to do is we need to add our border on our 4.5 inch or 4 inch finished quilt block. And so we're going to start with our pieced block. And we're going to start with the two 1.5 by 4.5 inch pieces. So these two right here, pull them up there, are going to go on either side right here. And all we're going to do is we are going to take this one, place it right there on top, right sides together, and this one, right sides together. You can go ahead and pin if you're new. Most people, or a lot of people, like to pin even if they're really good sewers, so don't hesitate to pin. And we're going to sew 1/4 inch away from this seam and 1/4 inch away from this seam. Okay, I've got both sides sewn on, and I pressed toward that border. Now let's add our 1.5 by 6 inch piece of fabric. We're going to add that to the top and the bottom. That just makes our little bee pop, doesn't it? So what we're going to do is put right sides together again. Again, pin if you need to. And we're going to sew 1/4 inch away and 1/4 inch away. Now I do want to remind everyone, especially those new viewers and new sewers, when you are sewing small blocks like this, you do need to have an accurate seam, especially for this pincushion, because we want it to come out right, and it'll be very frustrating if your seam allowance is off. So just be sure you have the right seam allowance. So I'll take care of this one. And there I have the top and the bottom, and again I pressed toward the border. Okay, so there is our cute block. Now at this point it's too big for our pincushion, but we're going to quilt it before we trim it down. Now if you are not wanting to quilt yours and you just want to put it on like this, you're just going to skip this next section and then come back when we're trimming it down. So to quilt this block, we need our 6.5 inch piece of batting. It's 6.5 inch square. And as you can see, it's just a tad bit larger. And I just do that just to make sure it's covered. Again, we're going to be trimming this down just a little bit, but I want to make sure it's bigger than what I'm going to be sewing on. Now at this point, you can use some adhesive spray, you can use some liquid school glue. I'm just going to get mine stuck on real quickly with this. And then I'm going to give it a quick press to dry it. And I just don't have any any special design, just trying to get it all on there. And this is a small piece, so I don't worry too much about it buckling up too much. And we don't have anything underneath it. We're not going to put a piece of fabric underneath. We don't need it. We don't need the thickness. We want our pins to go through easy enough, and we don't need to waste that fabric. So I'm going to give this a press to dry my glue. And then I'm going to bring you down to the sewing machine to show you how I quilt this. So I have it all ironed. The fabric is set onto my batting. But before I bring you to the sewing machine, I wanted to share with you, I'm going to use a walking foot, and I don't always use my walking foot when I quilt, but I'm just going to be doing it today because I want to use this piece right here on it, and that just allows me to make one line on my fabric, and then I just have to use this on my stitches after that, and I can change the distance to how thick I want to do it, but I'm going to go ahead and use my walking foot. If you don't have a walking foot, that's fine. You can decide how you want to quilt this. If you want to just do free motion, if you have a free motion foot, you can do that. You can stitch in the ditch. You can stitch about 1/4 inch away from the ditch all around, or you can make straight lines, and that's what I'm going to do. You can make straight lines going diagonally. You can make straight lines going up and down, across, or you can make them up and down and across diagonally and the diagonally the other way, whatever you like. Now, I'm not going to make two big of a pattern here. This one has, let's see how far apart those are. My quilting on this one, it's like a little bit bigger than an inch block, and it will do just fine. And so I'll probably do something like that on this one. And so the thing that I just need to do here is I just need to draw one line going one direction and one line going the other if I do it like this, because this is diagonal. So let me grab my marking chalk, and I am just going to put a line there lightly, and just do it lightly, and a line there lightly. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'll bring you down to the machine, and when I go on this line, the first time I'll go directly on the line, then I'm going to go over and do this, then I can turn my fabric and go on the other side down and keep doing that. Just give myself enough thread to make those turns. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sewing machine and I'm just going to sew right down on that line that I marked. And I am going to make my stitch just a little bit bigger. All right, so now I am just going to carefully stitch on that line. And when I get to the end, I'm just going to lift up my presser foot. And now, let's see, I've got a little bit of fabric underneath there. I'm going to let a little bit of fabric out, or a little bit of thread out there, I guess I should say. And I am going to adjust my distance here. And I don't know how far that is. That is about an inch and a quarter, so I could do about an inch, I guess. Let me go in just a little bit. And that's about an inch. You don't have to be any certain amount, just to let you know how much I'm using. But I'm going to do about an inch. That way I won't have to do too many. It'll go pretty quickly. So I keep this right here, and it doesn't even have to be touching right on that line that I just sewed, and see what we got. And then I go off. I pick up my presser foot, and now I give myself a little thread, and now I'm going to go on to the other side because I can't go on this side since my line gauge is right there. So I'm going to go over here to this side, put my line gauge right there where I sewed at the very beginning, and stitch it down. I'm just going to keep doing that. With this small block, it's easy to do this just going on each side. You'll just have some threads to cut. And some people just eyeball it, whatever you want to do. And I'm using white. If you had a preference of thread that you wanted to use whatever color you think would go nicely with your block. Now right there, I let it buckle just a little bit, but it's getting close to the edge, and I think I can even press that out. I think I'm just going a little bit too quickly. And I can even get just a tiny bit more right here. And the reason I am not cutting my threads is because my thread cutter is broken. And so if I want to make sure that I don't have to keep threading my machine, I just let it go. Okay, so now I have all of these threads right here, which are very easy to cut. And once you've got all of your threads trimmed, we're ready to go the other direction. So now I'm going to go this way on here. Again, we're going to line up right there on that corner, and my line is really faint, but I can still see it. That's fine. Now I just need to trim those threads and I'll bring you right back. Okay, so I've got it all quilted and I've got my threads trimmed off. Now we're ready to trim this down. Now we need to trim this block to 5.5 inches square. If you have a 5.5 inch square ruler, you can find the center of your block and put the center, and this is not a 5.5, but it will have a center. Put it directly on your block, line up the lines, and trim it off on all 4 sides. Now I'm going to use a bigger ruler since not everybody has a 5.5 inch ruler, and I'm going to show you how to do that with anything bigger or 5.5 inches or bigger to trim down a block. So I know that since this block is 6 inch square right now, I need to take off 1/4 inch all around. And the border right now is 1 inch. So from here to here is 1 inch. So if I take 1/4 inch off, I need 3/4 inch border. So I can go around and I can do a 3/4 inch border on all sides. Just like that. I can match the line on my fabric with 3/4 inches right there. And then I can trim that off. Now I'm going to do one side like that. Then I'm going to turn it. I'm going to scoot this to 1/4 inch away from the one, which is 3/4 inch here. Make sure each of those spots, each of those edges of that border is on the 3/4 inch mark. Okay, and this is nice and straight because I want to make sure it's all square. Take that one off. Now it's easy. Now we just need to put these 2 edges on the 5.5 inch. And you want to do it this way just in case your block wasn't quite the right size. Doing it at the end like this will ensure that you're going to have a 5.5 inch square block. So we've got this edge matched up to 5.5 inches, this edge matched up to 5.5 inches. That means all of this on the outside here, and let me see if I can get my hand over there, away from the camera, here gets trimmed off. And that looks like it's about 1/4 inch of fabric there. So now I should have a 5.5 inch block, and I do. Okay, so there is my top piece for my pincushion. Next thing we're going to do, we are going to add the sides. Now on this, what I have found to work the best is to mark these sides. And you can use pencil, you can use an erasable marker, whatever you want, just don't make it real dark. Don't want to use a permanent marker that would bleed. I can just use a friction pen. So what we're going to do is we are going to take and we are going to measure, and I'm going to try doing all of these at once, a 1/4 inch away from the edge right here, and I'm just going to draw a line. Okay, I can see that. Then I can do the same. Let's see here. I'll do this way. I can do the same over here. And that looks good. Make sure the 1/4 inch away from all of the edges. That one's wanting to wiggle. And so what I'm doing here is I am marking the seam lines. And then on this one right here, we're going to do the long way, but we're not going to go all the way across. All we're going to do is mark that intersection and go a little bit farther over like that. So do you see how we have basically a 1/4 inch square in each corner? Then I can do the same here. So I've got a 1/4 inch square here. You want to just make sure you can see those lines, and a 1/4 inch square here. Okay, so this one has all 4 corners marked. And I'll continue doing that with the rest of these pieces. Whoops. Okay, so I have all of mine marked, and you're wanting to get these little 1/4 inch squares marked. So you need to have those lines pretty clear, because when we're sewing, we're going to use those lines. That way our corners will turn out really nicely, okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 4 strips together into one long strip. So I'm going to put right sides together. Now I am not just going to sew straight across and do it like that. I want to leave the ends right here unstitched. So the only part I want to stitch is from this line here to this line. So we're just stitching there. So you want to back stitch right there, and you want to back stitch right there. Do not go past that line or that line. And you want to be accurate, because that'll help with your piecing together your pincushion. I'm going to do this with all 4 of these pieces until they're in one long strip. Okay, I have finished sewing all 4 together, and as you can see, I have the ends open. Make sure that they all have a 1/4 inch away from the long edge open. Okay, now we're going to do this last one. We're going to just put all of these 4 together so that we end up with like a circle, or actually it's going to be a square. And so put those 2 ends together, right sides together, and again the same thing. So from that line to here and back stitch. Another hint, I put my stitch size down for these small stitches right here just to make sure they hold. My machine normally is on 2.4, and I just drop it to 2.0. Okay, they're all connected. Now I'm going to go to my ironing board, and I am just going to open up all of my seams and press them open. So I have all of my seams opened up, and we have a circle which will be turned into a square here soon. I'm going to set that aside for just a minute. Let's take out our pieced block. And on this piece block, we need to mark the same way. Now I'm using a friction pin, so it is heat erasable, and I'm going to try to not make it too far out, but I need to mark a little line on each edge that's a 1/4 inch away from, it will be right on the seam line, a 1/4 inch away from that long edge. So 1/4 inch away, make a mark up here, make a mark here. And you can see here we have one of our little squares again, a 1/4 inch square. And we're just going to go all around adding this 1/4 inch marking on the corners. And you do want to be accurate. That way you won't get frustrated when you're adding your sides. Okay, so I have my lines. Make sure I can see them well enough. And they have little 1/4 inch squares. Okay. Now we are ready to add this side piece. So this is inside out. This is face up. We're going to put right sides together. So I'm going to take one section from seam to seam, and it's going to go on one side of my block. And so if you can see right here, so we're going to butt that edge right there, right up to that line, and I'm going to put a little tiny pin in it. And if you have smaller pins, thin pins, if you have the thinner pins, use those. That works best here. And then on this other side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make sure that that butts right up to that line, okay? And put a pin in it. And when we hold it up, they should be about the same size. And we can put a pin in the middle too. Now I'm going to take this to my sewing machine. Well, I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch from right here, a 1/4 inch away, starting right there on that piece of fabric, right there. So I'm going to start right there, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch away from that edge all the way across. And then when I get to here, I am going to stop right there. And I could back stitch one if I wanted to also, but I'm going to stop right there. Then I'm going to pick up my presser foot. I am going to turn my project. I'm going to lift this piece, and you're going to have your needle gone by then, so that won't be a problem. And we're going to line up this next piece exactly that same way. And we will mark so that this corner right here is right on that line. This one down here should be right on, whoops, get my finger in there, right on that line right there. And we'll sew a 1/4 inch away again. And we're just going to keep doing that all the way around. Now, I don't like to pin all of it down at once. I like to do one side at a time. So I will start here. And then once I've pulled all these pins and I've gotten to here, then I will probably put a pin here. And then, of course, down where this needs to go here. And then I'll stitch it. All my pins will be pulled out. Then I'll do the same thing. Okay, we're going to go all the way around and close up all of those seams. Okay, just all around the perimeter. And I did have my stitch length down to 2.0 on my machine too, so it's less than what it normally is. And then we'll just pull this out, trim our threads, and we have it all in. Now I'm going to trim, and you might want to peek first to make sure all of your corners are good. Okay, I am just going to take some scissors here, and I am just going to take off that corner, like the top part of that pink corner there, and not cutting through my stitches though. Don't cut through your stitches that you just did. We're just going to take a little bit of that bulk out. Just the top half of that corner. Now we are ready to turn this inside out and see what we've got. Okay, and I do want to show you, you can see the markings. So I used my friction pin here, and mine will come out with heat. So whatever you use, make sure it's either very light, or it's water soluble, or it is heat. It's removed with heat, because you are going to see that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my piece over to the iron, and I am going to pinch these seams together like this and just give these a nice hot press on both sides all around, so that seam allowance gets pressed down just like that, and just press it as good as I can. Okay. That way we'll have nice square corners at the top. Okay, I'll bring you right back when I've got mine. All right, I've got it nicely pressed all around, and we are ready to take our bottom piece. We have a 5.5 inch square of regular fabric and a 5-inch square of fusible interfacing. Now, fusible interfacing is interfacing that will adhere to your fabric. Got some scraps on there. And we're going to turn it over, and on the wrong side, we're just going to eyeball it. We're going to see if we can put this right in the middle, so we have about 1/4 inch seam allowance all around. And I'm going to give this a nice hot press. Now, on fusible interfacing, one side is a little rougher than the other. The rough side has the fusing stuff on it, so that's the side that needs to go onto the fabric. If you don't have fusible interfacing, you could take regular interfacing and place that on it, and I would go ahead and make it the whole length of your piece. That way it will be, so instead of a 5-inch square, go ahead and cut it 5.5 inch squares, and that way it will be sewn into your fabric. If you needed to use batting or something like that, that would be fine too, but this fusible interfacing works just perfect. So if you have some, use some of that. So I'm going to just press this real well according to the directions on the fusible interfacing, and then I'll bring you right back. And so as you can see, that is now adhered. I can't lift that off. Now, also, if you wanted to add another block, go ahead and make another block and put it on there, just like I did on this carrot one. And you can quilt that with batting, and that would be fine too. But if just to make it easier, we're just going to make a plain backing. So now we've got this, and yes, you are right. We're going to flip this over, and we're going to mark this one just like we marked that last one. So let me grab my ruler here, and we are going to do the same thing. We're going to mark our corners. Whoops. Okay, I've got it all marked. I've got 4 corners that are 1/4 inch squares here. And we are going to do the same thing. But before we're going to do that, we need to decide if we're going to add a tag. Okay, so if you want to add a tag, this is the time to do it. Now, if I had my tag smaller, I could put one in the corner, but I thought that would just make this a little harder, and so I just added it at the bottom. And you could have it going either way. You can make it stay down if you want by stitching a few stitches in it, but I like it sticking out. So let's see here. So what we're going to do is, here is my tag, and I've already got it on the ribbon, and I'm going to fold it in half. I think I'm going to stitch it on the bottom piece, okay? And on this piece, it doesn't matter where I'm putting it because I can turn it anyway for this one. So I'm just going to take this, and I know there's going to be a 1/4 inch seam on it. So there's going to be a 1/4 inch seam across here, and so I'm going to hang it over a little bit and trim that off, just making sure that everything that would be in that 1/4 inch seam, yep, would be lined up there. And you can either use pins or a clip. The clip tends to get in my way, so I'm going to pin it with some pins. And I am just going to sew a 1/4 inch. Actually, you can sew inside that 1/4 inch if you want, because your 1/4 inch will catch it when you're doing your seam allowance. And I'm just going to sew it across here maybe twice just to give it some extra support. I have it on, and I trimmed it down to match the edge of the fabric, and so it is on. And then once we do our 1/4 inch seam, it'll give it another stitch a little bit below that line, and that will be great. So we're going to keep this piece going this way, and I think I'm going to have my tag, I think I'm going to have it at the top, because that would be once it's turned like this. No, I'm going to put it at the bottom because that's the way it's going to be, okay? So this is going to go on the bottom like that, okay? So we're going to put this so it's right side up, and we're going to go ahead and keep our tag inside. And now what we're going to do is we are going to take and do the exact same thing. We're going to flip this inside out. And my bee is here, so I need to make sure this is the top up here and this is the bottom. Okay, so with right sides together, I'm going to start down here at the bottom. And I'm going to go ahead and right over here, I'm going to remind myself with a friction pin. Since I'm starting on this side, I don't want to forget that I need to leave a space about 2 inches maybe or so, just a big enough space to be able to flip it, maybe a little bit bigger than that. But when I get over here, I need to remember to stop there, backstitch, and then come over here and finish it off, and then that will be open because we'll need to turn it back out, and it's inside out when we finish, and we'll need to turn it right side out when we're done. So we're going to start up here, and this is the bottom of my bee, right sides together, and we're going to match that edge again, just like we did at the top there. That right there. Come down here. That needs to be there. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a pin right there where the label is. Now I'm going to go slow on the label because it's quite a few thicknesses there, and we don't need to make a mess of it. So just take your time through that thick spot. And I do have my quilting needle on, so I just usually use that one. So it's a strong enough needle that should be good. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on this bottom part as we did at the top part. Once that's done, I'll just turn just like we did before and go all the way to the line that I marked, backstitch, skip over here, finish this edge. Make sure you backstitch and backstitch at the end. All right, I have my finished piece. I've sewn all around. I left my opening right here. So now what we're going to do is, I don't think we need to cut these off. These aren't thick like the other side with the batting, so we'll just leave those corners on. They should be fine. But we just need to turn this right side out. And just push your fingers in there and grab a hold of it. If you backstitched on your ending seams, you should be good. If not, you might pull a few stitches, but you can sew them back down by hand. And push those corners out. And if you need to, you can use a corner pusher. Just don't push through your fabric. Okay, and so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go to the ironing board and press these edges on the bottom, just like I did the top ones, just so that I have a nice pressed edge there. And you can decide if you want your tag going in or out. I think I'm going to go ahead and do mine sticking out, so I'll just have it like that. But don't hit your tag with your iron, because that transfer is that plastic and it will melt it, so be real careful when you're ironing right there. Okay, so I've got it all pressed there on that, and now we need to put some stuffing in it. And you know, you can use your choice. Here we have some ground black walnut shells, some white rice. I know there's other things you can use. I'm going to do for mine white rice and then the polyfill. The ground black walnut shells are a little expensive, and I'm going to save these. There's not too many in here. I'm going to save this bag for something smaller when I do a little tiny pincushion. That will be good for this one. Rice is my go-to right now, especially since I'm making so many of them. So let me get this filled about halfway with the rice, and I can just take a little funnel and put it in there and then pour the rice in, and then I'll bring it back and show you how we can stuff it. Okay, so I have rice up to about the halfway mark. Now I'm just going to take some of this polyfill and put it in small pieces, and you can just work it around in there. You know, you want the rice to be kind of scattered throughout too. And I actually like the rice to be in the corners. But you need to have a little poly in there because there's not enough rice to lay flat and fill those corners. And I'll kind of close it up a little bit and move the rice to the middle so I can get some polyfill back in there. And I usually keep the polyfill more on the top part, just because it's easier to get my needles through that. And then the bottom, and the rice will naturally go to the bottom anyway. Okay, and so check my corners. And it's a little tricky, and you can pin this up and try pushing it to the corners to see if that would be manageable. So I can just temporarily pin this and make sure that I can get the rice over to those corners. So I need a little more rice here. I think I'm going to pour a little rice in the top here. That way it can get in there. Put a little rice at the top there and put some in the corners over here. And a little funnel is really handy to have. You know, it can be a big funnel, but it has to have a smaller nozzle that will go into that, and that works really nicely. So now what we need to do is we need to fold under 1/4 of an inch on both of those pieces of fabric. And then we need to put pins in it. And then just using a needle and thread, we're just going to close that up. You can use a whip stitch or a binding stitch, whatever kind of stitch you want to, but just make little tiny stitches so it's not very noticeable. And I'll bring you back when I've got mine done. So as I was stitching this, I thought, oh, there might be somebody that does not know how to hand stitch. And I'm sure there are lots of people, because a lot of people don't do this anymore. So I had pinned it, I had knotted my thread, and I'm using 2 strands. And I had gone in to my fabric down here, and then I hid the knot inside. And I've been stitching, and that's when I thought, oh, maybe I better show this. This is just one thing that you can do. I am not a person that knows my stitches or anything like that, but I do use this when I am stitching things closed, and it's just because you don't see the threads. So let me see if I can zoom in a little bit closer. Okay, so I'm working on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go across. Here's my thread coming out this red side. I'm going to go ahead and stick my needle directly across into the fabric, and this is the turquoise fabric on mine, and I'm going to nest my needle inside that fold, and then I'm going to come out about 1/4 of an inch or less and come into that red fabric. Do you see my needle there? Okay, and then when I do that, pull on my thread, it closes it up. Now there's probably better stitches than this, or somebody that does a lot of hand stitching would be much better than me, but this works for me. And so then I'm going to go again. I'm going to go, see if I can do this while watching the camera and my project. I'm going to go right in across from that. And you want to use a pretty nice needle, thin needle. And I'm going to keep it in that folded area. Then I'm going to come out right there and pull it. And you can see my stitch is hidden. And I'll do the same thing. Right there, bury my stitch in that fold, bring it out about, oops, 1/4 of an inch away, pull it, just like that. If you look at it in regular ways, it doesn't show up as much there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and when I get to the end, I will tie 1 single knot, and then I will stick my needle. Well, I'll show you when I get there. Okay, so I've come to the end where I've got it all sewn together. Okay. And you might want to just give yourself a little tug on your thread to make sure you've got it nice and tight. Now what I do is I just make a knot. I make a circle, bring my needle through, and then I take my needle and I hold it right there next to the bottom of the thread and pull. And then I have a little knot right there. Okay, now I don't want that knot to be seen, so I'm going to go right next to it, not in the same hole, but just right next to it. And I'm going to push it through all the way on the other side. And then what I'm going to do is when I get just about, I think we got a little knot forming around it. There we go. Just about, when I get just about to the end, I give it a little snap. And it pops right in to the fabric, and so my knot is hidden inside. And so over here on this side, I can just pull it a little bit, trim it, and that end will also go into the inside. So let's kind of fool around here to get our rice and everything back in the right spot. Okay. And you might need to take a few minutes to do that. Check your seams and everything, make sure they look good. If you don't want yours sticking out, you can take and put a few stitches to hold it down. That's fine. I wouldn't sew it again here because that would mess up your edge, but I like mine sticking out, so I'm going to leave mine like that. I think that's cute. And there we have our bee pincushion. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate that. Also, don't forget to like and share. That helps my channel out a lot. If you are new to my site, there are lots of other sewing videos that you can find. Before this one, just go to my channel, Blue Rooster Farm, and there'll be a lot of helpful information in those videos too. Thanks so much for watching and have a great week.